With the recent buffs to Lee Sin in 12.15, he's become a staple in the meta again. Let's break down how you want to play this comp. Today we're going over what to do in the early, middle, and late game, what units to hold items for transitions, how to position well, what augments to look for, when to roll down, and how to secure top 4 in first place. To start the game, you want to look for Ezreal and Jade 3. Ez will hold your items until you find Lee Sin, and Jade 3 will be your early game shell. It gives great healing and attack speed, and since 2 units are Dragonmancers, it's an easy splash. Your early game tank will be Taric, and at level 5, you want to add Qiyana for Tempest 2. You can play Guardian 2 as well if you can't find her yet. Moving into the mid game, if you have Karma and Ashe 2-star, and hopefully Ezreal as well, you should be able to win streak early, until you find Lee Sin and can play Dragonmancer 6. But until you can, your board should remain at Jade 3, Mancer 3, and either Tempest 2 or Guardian 2. Once you're ready to make the switch, throw Lee Sin in and your other Dragonmancers for 6. At level 7, put Jade 3 back in with either Gnar or Neeko. Nearing the end of the mid game, most of your units should be 2-starred, except for the high cost units. Units like Neeko or maybe Lee Sin. Your main tank is going to be Neeko. If your board is very weak, you want to stabilize along the way, so you don't lose too much HP. You can do this by finding 2-star units. Rushing level 7 to roll down only works if you're snowballing, so if you aren't, then play it slow. Once you're at level 7, you should be slow rolling. Your goal is to find Lee Sin 3-star, and if possible, Swain and Volibear 3-star. Between Swain or Volibear, whoever you 3-star will be the secondary carry. Swain is preferred since he can deal damage from a safe distance. If you're struggling to hit either of them, it's best you move on. Losing too much econ can harm your chances of securing a high placement. Once you're ready to commit to the roll down, then go for it. I recommend not going below 20 gold though, since you'll need it later in the game. Only do it if you're desperate and you're very close to hitting your carry. Once you hit, move on to level 8 so you can find your higher cost units. At level 8, you want to use Ornn for Tempest 2. Also look to replace Set with Yasuo if you can. And really late into the game, at level 9, you can swap Ornn for Ao Shin for Tempest 4. Now let's talk about transitioning items between units. First is the DPS. Here we'll go from Ezreal to Lee Sin. The first items built should be the crit items, Infinity Edge and Jeweled Gauntlet. This should be the first item slam since they work well on both units. Bloodthirster or Hodge should be slammed last. Next are the tank items. These will go from Taric to Neeko. Building for Neeko, you should look for Warmogs and Stoneplate. Your third item can be any tank item. It should be given to Volibear if he is not your secondary carry. Let Neeko copy the tank stats from him for double the value. If Volibear is the secondary carry, then let Neeko hold the third item anyway. Sunfire Cape is my go-to because it's strong in the early game and has value throughout the whole game. Now for secondary carry items. These items should not be built unless you secured your tank and DPS items first. Ideally, it would be QSS, Ginsu's, and Shiv. This combo can be flexed on either Volibear or Swain, and provides great attack speed damage and excellent AoE plus MR shred. As mentioned earlier, Swain is preferred due to being at range, but if you hit 3-star Volley but not Swain, then he will do well with them too, especially if you combine with an augment like Celestial Blessing. Now let's go over some positioning. In the early game, you'll want to have your board clumped up around the Jade statue in a corner, but as the game continues, you will transition your main units toward the front of the board so that Lee Sin can stand in melee range. This includes your Jade statue. Here's how it'll look. Since your units can be pretty clumped up, enemy Sona is the scariest counter. You'll need to swap your board on the same side as her to avoid being ulted. Use Karma as the bait unit to pull the ult away from the team. Now for Lee Sin, you want to position him on the opposite side of the enemy backline, in front of the enemy tank. You want him to kick the main tank into the backline for collateral damage. Also make sure that he starts just behind your Neeko so he's not targeted right away. If you secure the Eye of the Storm augment, move Lee Sin into the center so he gets the buff. Have Neeko on the left or right depending on the enemy comp arrangement. You want her to be targeted first. It may be a little harder to position for collateral damage, but the buff is worth it. Now let's go over augments. Eye of the Storm is great because it synergizes with Tempest and gives Lee Sin a huge damage boost. Celestial Blessing allows Lee Sin to drop a healing item, and Jeweled Lotus allows him to drop Jeweled Gauntlet. You can use the extra item slot for something like QSS to avoid CC, Titan's Resolve for tank damage and stats. The preferred option here is QSS since he is in melee range. Thrill of the Hunt can give huge burst healing. If Lee Sin one-shots a unit or knocks front line to the back line, one-shotting multiple units, you get big bursts of healing. I do not recommend dropping a healing item for this though, as it's not reliable. Second Wind is not terrible if you need the healing, but it's the worst option since it scales with HP and not with damage. Cybernetic Shell is a great choice because it gives the team a bunch of tank stats. Uplink is okay because it allows for more kicks and more spells to be used. Cybernetic Implant is kind of weak since AP is what Lee Sin uses. Gadget Expert is an excellent choice. It can be insanely powerful because it comes with a free shiv, and you can give that to Swain so that he can shred MR for Lee Sin to do damage. Triforce is very strong in this comp because there's several 3-cost units. Volibear, Lee Sin, and Swain are the main units and benefit highly from this augment. Big Friend can be very useful when synergized with Nico plus Warmogs. Once she meets the threshold, she provides great tank stats to your board. Makeshift Armor is good for low item rolling games. However, it's still not that great since Nico needs items to do well and Lee Sin is in melee range and he definitely needs his items. Verdant Veil can be useful in the late game. There's tons of CC during that stage of the game, and if you secured or high rolled strong items and augments early, then this is a great third slot. Econ augments like Rich Get Richer are strong on 2-1 since you want multiple 3-cost 3-star units. To max out the value of your board, you'll need a lot of econ. If you can play it without losing too much health, it's definitely worth. Late game econ augments like Windfall are only useful when you're super close to hitting your units and desperate for gold. Otherwise, I would avoid it. Axiom Mark is a pretty weak option. Lee Sin can get some value out of it if he one-shots multiple enemies at once, but otherwise that's pretty much it, especially since there's low value on Volibear and Swain since they don't use too much mana. Dragonmancer Crown is good in the early game since it provides a Lee Sin and a Hand of Justice, so if you find it early, you can snowball pretty hard, but in the late game, it's not very worth it. I would avoid taking this unless absolutely necessary. Now here's a couple tips to help you secure top 4. Warmogs, Sunfire, or Morello on Nico are excellent choices. Shiv, Ginsu's, QSS on Swain are super powerful. Depending on enemy comps, make sure to slam Bramble or Declaw and have Nico copy those tank stats. Don't forget to scout every turn to make sure Lee Sin is knocking the front line into enemy backline carries. Focus on playing the econ game well, as this comp requires a lot of gold. If you're going for first, be sure not to waste it unnecessarily. Dragonmancers is one of the most flexible comps in the game. If you want to know how to flex your carries and items, go watch my last video where I go in depth on the topic. Until next time, I'm Swagadelic.